company, and in particular how it aims at tackle the Agenda 2030 targets. Indeed, they are aiming by 2030 to be carbon negative, water positive, and to produce zero waste while protecting ecosystem at the same time. And in this presentation in particular, we will connect those corporate aims with the experiences of the younger staff on the ground that we are happy to be joined also by tonight. So I would say this is pretty much it by my side, and I will leave as much time as possible to our wonderful guests to talk to us.
Amazing. So I am going to start by attempting to present my screen. So bear with me, everyone, 1 second. And when everyone, let me just go to share, can see my screen. If anyone can just give me either a physical thumbs up or a, you've got your cameras on, so a thumbs up would be great. Give me 1 second.
We do see.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. So thank you so much, firstly, for the invitation to come and join you, especially on a weekend evening from multiple different places, and myself and Alberto are dialing in from the UK. So we're going to spend probably about the next hour, 45 minutes, taking you through 3 different perspectives from Microsoft. So hopefully there'll be something in this for everyone, for the science people in you, the business leaders in you, those that are wanting to create a community. We hope that there is something across our 3 different parts of our presentation that will really help. So first off, I'm going to introduce who we've got on the call, because we've actually got someone else joining us as well from the Italian subsidiary. So I'll start off first. So as you can see on the screen, my name is Eve Joseph. I am British. I sit in the UK. I live in the middle of England. So if any of you have ever heard of Robin Hood, who lives in a forest in Nottingham, I basically live near there. And how I would describe myself in the role that I do. So I've put on here, I'm a business activist, and I've actually taken this phrase from a great sustainability leader from an organization called Novozymes in the Nordics, who talks about being a business activist. So we all think, and you probably all think, that there is activism that you want to do within the world of sustainability, but actually, how do we marry that with actually working for a corporation and earning money from a corporation? Because most people think of activism as activists as people that work for government or charities or non-governmental organizations. And what I'm trying to do is bring my activism and my love for the planet and utilize a business as my way of actioning that thought. So I just thought it was an interesting term that many of you might want to describe yourself as. And my other joy is my dog, Robin, who I love going walking with in the forest. So I'm absolutely a dog lover. So I'm then gonna, I'll tell you a bit more about my role as I move through the presentation. But Alberto, do you want to do your brief intro?
Oh, thank you very much, Eve. It's such a pleasure to be here and presenting with Eve and Eduardo. So same as Eve, I have a little bit of an interesting role within Microsoft, because a lot of people don't realize that Microsoft also does a lot of science. We have a sustainability science team, of which I'm part of. And the whole point of this is essentially to try to make all of this science useful and really help Microsoft help the world. The point here is not just to do something that is going to be very useful for Microsoft, but something that is going to be very useful for the world. And then this second hashtag, raising monsters, is because I literally have 3 small monsters of 5, 3, and 1 years old that were running me dry only an hour ago in the park. It's a beautiful day here in the UK. I live also in the UK in the southwest, and this is one of the interesting facts. This is entirely kind of British accent. So I became a British citizen a few years ago. So despite this not looking very British, it's actually a British accent, but I'm Spanish originally, and it's such a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to talk to you in a few minutes. And Eduardo, all yours.
Thank you, Alberto and Eve, for the introduction, and thank you all for inviting us. I am Edoardo Vaquer from Italy. I'm from Torino. And as you can see from the slide, my role in Microsoft is a customer success account manager. So basically, I'm in charge of their support and to make our customers happy. My CV is much shorter than the one of my colleagues. They are more expert than me, but I consider myself very close to you because I still consider myself very young. So I hope that you feel like you have a friend here. And basically, apart from my usual job, I am also the lead for the sustainability community in Italy, which is basically a group of employees who take care about the environment. They are mostly passionate about all the green stuff and all the ways in which we can support and act in practical ways to improve our planet through the activities of our company. We will dig into that in a bit, but for the moment, nice to meet you all.
Awesome. So that was a brief intro to the three of us that are walking you through the next hour. If I keep looking over here, I'm just looking on my phone because I can't see the chat on my screen. I don't know why. So feel free to engage with us on the chat, and I'm in my Teams thing on my phone. So if you want to ask any questions as we go through, if you want clarification on anything, please do either come off mute or feel free to type. That is absolutely fine. This is hopefully reasonably informal. But yeah, please just jump in when you want to. So the first bit I'm going to talk to you about before I hand over to Alberto to go through the really interesting science stuff is I thought I would just give you all an insight into what Microsoft is doing around sustainability, because we get so many questions from individuals around why is a business creating such momentum in this space, and the commitments that we made last year were really quite pioneering. Not many other businesses around the globe had made such an effort, and we kind of get asked all the time, well, what is it that we're doing and how are we doing it and why? So hopefully in the next sort of 10 minutes, I'll give you a bit of insight into the what, into the how, and into the why. So in terms of the what, so what is our strategy? We want to be the leading platform provider for technology solutions to the environmental challenges of the world. So if you think about a lot of the challenges that countries are facing at the moment, there are ways to solve those challenges. One of the main ways we're going to do it, other than through the science that Alberto will talk about and the communities that we need to create that Edoardo will talk about, we need technology to support progression in this area. There are lots of different ideas and sparks of ideas that are being created, but if we don't follow the technological trend and if we don't use technology to support us, we probably won't make the achievements we need to in terms of, you know, the climate Paris Agreement and things like that. So when we look at our strategy, we have kind of 4 environmental pillars, and then we have 5 business pillars for how we're going to achieve it. And there are a number of different businesses that will look this way as well. They look at the environmental pillars that they want to work towards, and then they look at the business. So our environmental pillars are the ones around the circle. So you'll see on the screen here, you'll see carbon, water, waste, and ecosystems. And we are looking to make an improvement in those 4 different areas. Now, we talked about wanting to improve our carbon. So we want to be carbon negative by 2030. So we only have 9 years left to do this. We also want to be water positive by 2030. So the ways in which we're doing things like that, in water, we are thinking about the data centers that we have to build and supply, because at the back end of all your phones and all your devices is a cloud, is a data center, is some compute somewhere. And we need to make sure that the energy we are using at those data centers are efficient and as green as possible, but also that the water that we use, even though we minimize the amount of water that we do use, we need to make sure we utilize that in an efficient way. So one of the hows in water that you might be interested in is we are looking at the different areas we're building data centers, but then we're looking at the ecosystem and the water ecosystem around that data center and thinking more holistically about, is there a water shortage? In the future, is there risk of there being a water shortage? And if so, is building a data center there the right thing to do? Or how do we build the data center so we incorporate the different water systems that are surrounding that data center? Because it would be really terrible if we built a data center somewhere where there'll then be water shortages for the people living there, but we're able to function with our servers and keep our servers running. So we're working hard to support that. We want to be zero waste as well by 2030. We are working hard on our where our offices are. So we have offices in multiple countries. You've got the UK and Italy represented here with Edoardo, myself, and Alberto. But we have offices across Europe, in Sweden, Denmark, Northern Ireland, everywhere, Australia, America, all those different sort of worldwide places. And we need to make sure that we take care of how we support those buildings as well. So we're making sure we're zero waste operationally there. So making sure we recycle, making sure we don't send anything to landfill, but then also we need to think about the products that we build. So we build Xboxes and we utilize, as I mentioned, servers. So there's a lot of packaging that comes with those. So a how on our waste is we are at our data centers, we're creating these circular centers and we're piloting it at the moment in the Netherlands near Amsterdam. And servers have a shelf life, a lifespan of between 3 and 5 years. And what's happening is, at the moment, with a lot of organizations, those servers are being thrown out and e-waste is becoming a really big problem. So everyone talks about food waste across the globe, but we also need to think about e-waste. So how many of you on the phone have replaced your phone recently in the last year and even thought about where your old phone goes? Now we need to start thinking, because in those phones are really important and precious minerals and metals that are going to run out. And at the moment, we're digging them out from lots of different places like the Amazon and Africa. They will run out. So we need to make sure we can also recycle our e-waste. So one thing we're doing under waste is we are supporting our data centers to try and reuse and recycle a lot of the equipment that is in the data centers back into the data centers, or sending them out to our local regions as well. And then finally, we're looking at ecosystems. And one of the main things we're doing here is we're trying to build a planetary computer. Now, the easiest way of thinking about this is think of a digital twin. Many of you might have heard of a digital twin, but think of an online version of the Earth. So if you want to measure weather systems, if you want to measure tidal systems, if you want to measure where animals are migrating to and from across different continents, we want to be able to mirror that in computers. So lots of different policymakers and organizations and NGOs can access that data and then do something incredible with it. So for instance, measuring water pollution at the moment might take a couple of weeks to actually go to the water, take it out, put it into a tube, take it back to a lab, analyze it, and then takes weeks to kind of go through that. Whereas we've got systems, and there are systems being built where you can put a remote sensor in the river and it's literally taking data points almost every second. And then that's being fed back into a data system, and then that can be used instantly, as opposed to having to wait weeks for these things to be analyzed. So we are trying to create a planetary computer in partnership with a number of different organizations. And then some more of the how is inside the circle. So the 5 pillars that I mentioned, that I won't go into too much detail here. And I know that Edoardo is going to talk very much about how our employees are supporting us. But the biggest thing to take away from this is there are multiple facets to a business taking on sustainability. And for those of you that are interested in how other businesses can do that, they'll probably follow a similar theme. They've got to look at their products. How are they building them? How are they making sure they're more sustainable? What are they building them from? Then they're looking at their customers and the partners that they work with. So who are they selling these products to? Who is utilizing them? How far is it traveling for those customers to utilize that product? And think more about how we can minimize some of the disruption that's happening there. Policy is super important, which is why we love being on calls like this with audiences like yourselves, the kind of future leaders in politics and policy. We need to use our voice. As Microsoft, we're a big voice, we're a big influencer. We need to think more about how we can advocate for certain policies within governments to make sure we're really pushing the needle and making governments move faster. And then operationally, it goes without saying, I mentioned that earlier about our waste. A lot of our how, so I mentioned the what, then the how is through our operations. So making sure our real estate and facilities are working on all of this and thinking about our fleets and thinking about how we're using electricity, right through to how the laptop that you are all dialed into now, how much energy is that laptop using from the beginning of its life right through to the end? And we need to think about that. So I can't see any questions coming in on the chat. I hope my phone is working with the chat, but if there are any questions on that, on the wheel of our strategy, let me know. One thing I thought would be super important is always start at the top. If any of you are thinking about trying to influence change, think about who's at the top and get them on your side. You'll see here in the image, on the left-hand side is an individual called Brad Smith. He's our chief legal officer at Microsoft. So he is responsible for all of the kind of political, legal, and sustainability work that we do. We needed to get him to understand what this all meant. And it was really interesting because at the launch of our commitments in 2020, Brad Smith, who is a lawyer by trade, did kind of a mini lecture on carbon maths. It was brilliant. We knew we had him at that point. In the middle is Amy Hood. For those of you on the line that are fierce women trying to drive change, look up Amy Hood. She's incredible. She's a great kind of mentor to the work that we're trying to do in Microsoft. She's our chief financial officer. She has all of the money. So we couldn't do anything unless we had her on side as well. So we had to make sure it was important that she knew and she was bought into what we were doing. And then finally on the right is Satya Nadella, who is our CEO. Many of you might be aware of Bill Gates, that kind of, he created Microsoft, but he isn't part of the leadership team anymore. Satya Nadella is our CEO. And all three of them were part of the announcements that we made in 2020. So super important that you start at the top and make sure they understand why we're doing what we're doing. The other thing I wanted to share with you was this thing called positions of influence. Again, it's super important for people that are looking to work with policymakers in politics, supporting governments across Europe, is you are never, as a person, you are never one person, but also as a business, we are not just one role. We are not just Microsoft. We are all these different things that you can see on the screen. So we are a customer. We are a customer of energy companies. We are a customer of cement. We need a lot of cement in the work that we do. We are suppliers to a lot of people. So again, some of you might be using Microsoft laptops. We're suppliers to universities. We're suppliers to mining companies. We're suppliers to oil and gas. And we need to think about that. We're then a partner. So we partner with a lot of tech companies around the globe that support the work that we do. And we need to think, well, if we're partnering with an organization, we need to make sure that they're working sustainably as well. We're an employer. There are over 120,000 employees at Microsoft globally, and you're getting to meet 3 of us today. But we always need to think about how we take responsibility for those employees that we're working for and making sure that we support their goals and their wishes. We're an investor, so we invest in a number of different things, including startup organizations, but we're also investing now specifically in carbon capture. So we sent out the largest RFP in July to really try and kickstart the market on carbon capture. It's a challenging market to be in, but we are now purchasing over 1.3 million tons of carbon, and we are purchasing it from 15 organizations across the globe. There are a handful in Europe, and 99% of those organizations are nature-based solutions, because at the moment, as I mentioned earlier, technology hasn't quite caught up with the desire of what companies need to do for carbon capture. And then finally, an advocate, which is exactly why we're here. For events like this, people often want us to share some of our learnings. We are very much on a journey. We have not got this perfect just yet, but we want to advocate for this process and for other businesses to follow suit, really. So I would just think, what are your positions of influence? Whether you are at university, whether you are working, whether you are at school, whether you have a weekend job, wherever you're at the moment in your life cycle, where are your positions of influence? So on here, it could be you are a daughter, you are a son, you are an auntie, you are a niece. You know, how can you support the people that you work with? It could be that you are a startup, you know, even through the European Youth Parliament. How can you as a community influence others with a lot of the work and ideas that you have in this space? And then finally, before I kind of hopefully get us on a bit of interaction to see who's still with us, I thought it might be interesting for some of you to see the journey that we have been on. We mainly started a lot of the work on sustainability in 2009, which makes me feel super old because that's also the year I started working here. And I'm not super old, but I started working at Microsoft straight from university. So some of you might be on that tipping point of where do you go and work? What do you do as a sustainability advocate, as a business activist? And I actually started working at Microsoft the year that they started taking an interest in sustainability. So I've worked my way up, and then I, like I said, joined on a graduate program, and I'm where I am now. And I think I have one of the best jobs at Microsoft. I essentially get to talk to customers all the time about why they should be thinking about sustainability and how they can be part of the change, and how their business, whether they're a mining company, a rural company, an agri company like agriculture, they could be a food company, a retailer, how can they use technology to really move the needle forward? And that is my job, and it's great. And then I get to do really awesome things like come and chat to you guys. So we want to hear from you briefly. And whilst you're doing this, I'm going to, see if there are any questions, because I hope Alberto and Edoardo might be able to see the IM because I'm not seeing it very well. And secondly, we want to just hear from you. So 2 ways of getting involved. You can, and I'm just going to get the website up in front of me. This is called Mentimeter. I hope some of you have used this before. So I've pressed play. We are all good. So you should be able to click on the link at the top, copy and paste, or you can use the QR code on the screen. And if you go onto the website, you're asked for a voting code, which is at the bottom, which is 60, 40, 60, and then 7. I'm going to give you all a minute, and I'm going to ask Alberto and Edoardo to be the test buddies here. Can you get access to it? Is it working?
From my phone, it's working.
Brilliant. So there are 2 questions. You should be able to see 2 questions. The first one is, how should businesses take responsibility for their emissions? So you've heard a bit about what we're doing, what Microsoft is doing. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think businesses should be doing, whether it's a retail business, whether it's a clothing business, farming, oil and gas. Let's think about what they should be doing. And then the next question is, what one thing would you like to see governments across Europe do to help us move the needle on our climate goals? And I know that's going to be really hard because they probably need to do 10 things, but we would really love to hear what you think one thing is that they could do. So I'm just going to give you all like a couple of minutes. Amazing. I'm already starting to see some ideas. I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second so we can see this word cloud form. Alberto and Edoardo, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, working well.
Okay, here's our word cloud so far. How should businesses take responsibility for their emissions? Be responsible. Absolutely. Sun collectors on buildings. Yes. What's really interesting about those is they used to be really, really expensive, and they're a lot cheaper now. So more businesses should totally be doing that. You like this one, Alberto? Have you seen the one at the top? Listen to science. Transparency. Yes, I love that. Whoever typed transparency, you are on the ball. Not enough companies share what they're doing in this space. They don't share what their carbon emissions are. They don't share what they're trying to do. We are not there. As I mentioned, we're on a journey, but not enough people are even sharing that they're on a journey. They're just kind of keeping everything quiet. I love, yes, someone else has put transparency. It's right in the middle. Compensate, held accountable, agreed. Absolutely agreed. Overgrowth strategy. I'm guessing by that one, someone might have meant they should think about sustainability before they think about growth. Another fascinating one that I think might come up in the Q&A, because you can't really do neither if you're a business. Okay, this is great. Thank you so much. Right, can everyone see the second question yet? Here we go. Yes, listen to youth voices. That's why we're here. That's why Edoardo and I are convincing ourselves we're still young. What else would you like to see governments do? And Filippo, I'm definitely going to screenshot this and share it for you.
Yes, we are recording the whole thing, so.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, is there just...
We entered Microsoft in the same program, Mac program.
Oh, so... amazing. Love this. Which Mac number were you, though? I was Mac 9.
I don't have a number, but I entered in 2018. So
much younger than me. Hold businesses accountable legally. Yes, and they do. A lot of governments are holding businesses accountable, especially on the number of emissions you're allowed to release. And also more recently, especially in the UK, there's an organisation called DEFRA, which is the Department for Energy, Farming and Rural Affairs. And they are now putting into place, they're asking all of their businesses that they work with to fill in what their carbon emissions are. So watch this space. More European countries should do what DEFRA do. Funds and awareness. Financially motivate companies to become more sustainable. Yes, agreed. Oh, what does the rest of that say? Put money into researching new technologies. Another one for Alberto, research and science. Boost the conversion to green energy. Yes, we need more of that. Banning fossil fuels. Oh, we've got some people on here that are controversial. More ambition targets. Yes. Discuss seriously a carbon tax. Whoever wrote that one, I'm going to put a link in the IM when it starts working. We've got a carbon tax at Microsoft. So we tax our business groups on the carbon that they use. So, and then we utilize that funding to then invest in other things. So I'm going to share something about carbon tax because someone else has put establish a carbon tax. Also, carbon tax, look at New Zealand. They do have a carbon tax. They don't call it the carbon tax. I can't remember its acronym. Maybe Alberto remembers it. It's called like EMZ, I think. And they also have a carbon tax within New Zealand because 40 or 68% of their emissions come from farming. Whereas in the UK and across Europe, it's a lot smaller. So yeah, if anyone's interested in carbon tax, go and look at what New Zealand are doing and think about that. Great. Okay. I'm going to leave this running. If people haven't filled in an answer, please fill it in. Thank you so much for having me. I'll be back for the Q&A once Edoardo is finished, but I'm going to hand over to Alberto. Do you want to share your own screen, Alberto, and then you can drive?
Yeah, that sounds good. Give me 1 second. I will.
Awesome.
I will find my own window. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Oops. Can you see them? I cannot see any of my slides now.
It's loading. If you have a problem, no problem. I can share for you.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Oop.
Let me share for you, Alberto.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem. You crack on. I'll pull it up.
So I will start. Actually, I was talking to Eve and Edoardo when we were preparing this session, and one of the things that Eve was telling me, oh, it would be good actually if you share a little bit where you come from and how you ended in the position that you ended and so on, because I should be clear, I'm definitely not young anymore. I mean, the little hair I have and how white it is, it will show you very clearly that I definitely no longer young. But same as many people, I just went to university without knowing very much what I wanted to do. I ended just going into physics simply because I liked the subject, and it was one of these things that I was good at. So I decided, why not? This should be fun. And while I was doing physics, actually, I started getting more and more interested in how planet Earth works, particularly. So I specialized in geophysics I finished my degree, and then you end in this kind of position in life where you need to start making a living. You want to buy a flat or rent a flat and essentially leave your parents' house. And as it happens, I ended just going to South America for a while just to work for banks and so on. And at some point, one of my teachers called me and said, well, if you wanted to go back into doing a PhD, there is the opportunity with some projects. And I decided, oh, well, why not? Let's go into doing a PhD. So I went into doing a PhD in climate modeling. And this is something interesting because some of you may be thinking actually about doing PhDs or things like that. And one statistics that people normally don't think when they go into doing PhDs, they have this idea that I'm going to go into a PhD and then I'm going to go into academia and I'm going to continue doing research. But actually less than 2-3% of the people normally end kind of reaching the top of the academia, just kind of the professor position. Most of the people who do PhDs actually end going into working for industry. So that's something to keep in mind. In my case, actually going into industry took a bit longer. So I did my PhD and then I joined the UK Met Office, which has one of the biggest kind of research centers in climate in the world, where I was leading the development of prediction systems and doing the kind of simulations that go into the intergovernmental panel for climate change. And then more recently, after getting interested in things like cloud and machine learning and so on for many years, Lucas Giopa, who is our Chief Environmental Officer and has been pushing for quite a lot of the work that we do in Microsoft, convinced me to jump into Microsoft and have the pleasure to work with the likes of Eve and Edoardo doing things. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about this, and I was really glad actually to see that some of you have mentioned the issue of science as one of the really important things to actually be able to deal with climate change, because I believe that wholeheartedly that science is going to be one of the things that will take us out of this. But coming back to the point where Eve kind of started the presentation, Microsoft is trying to do a lot in the area of carbon and climate change, and particularly we have made the commitment that we will be carbon neutral and carbon negative, in fact, beyond 2030. And this is a very, very challenging thing to do. And this graph that I saw here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. You will not be able to see my cursor because it's not me sharing. But the graph that you see here is actually the evolution of the carbon that is emitted by Microsoft for the next few years, and you can see where year 2020 is, and you can see that there is a clear inflection point in there. So if things were just to continue as they were before, we will continue emitting quite a lot of carbon, and it's only because we have made this very strong commitment that we expect to see a very strong reduction. And this is coming from two things. So one, we are putting a lot of effort into our operations, the data centers, the way we generate devices, etc., so they generate less carbon. But also we are starting to put a lot of effort and research on how can we capture carbon from the atmosphere. And this matters because everything that we do, we not simply do it because of Microsoft and because we want to hit our commitments. We do these things actually so we can release the knowledge and we can make it very, very clearly public, so others can also learn from these experiments and these experiences that we accumulate, and hopefully more people can accelerate the route towards kind of having zero carbon emissions. Eve, could I have the next slide, please? Oh, Filippo, you wanted to ask something?
May I? I'm really sorry.
Yes, please.
I wanted to ask something because about carbon emissions, there was this really interesting measure adopted by the Kyoto Protocol, the emission trading. I wanted to know if Microsoft enjoyed this possibility, if Microsoft actually did trade carbon with other companies. Because as far as I saw on the farmer graph, the Kyoto Protocol was implemented in '97, and from 2000 there is actually the growth of CO2 emissions actually reduced. So I believe maybe that could be one of the reasons why.
Yeah, so there has been there has been different attempts to create kind of a carbon market, if you want, in which the whole idea behind that was to say, okay, look, the world can produce X amount of carbon to keep things under control, and therefore we are going to give everybody kind of, if you want, tokens of how much they can emit, and then you can trade these things. It has never been very successful because it has had many difficulties from the point of view of how do you allocate these tokens, to how you trade them, how you monitor them, and to be frank, even more importantly, we have reached a point now in which there is no safe amount of carbon that we can emit. So we really have to become kind of a carbon zero economy, and in fact, ideally, a carbon negative economy. All of the analysis in terms of keeping the earth away from boiling and really keeping kind of the increase in temperature safe require that we are able to essentially eliminate the carbon that we emit. And that's why the work that we are doing at Microsoft actually is particularly important, because currently, as a human society, we don't really know well enough how to do carbon removal. So by doing what we are doing, and we have just started this, so this was the first year that we have done a big corporate purchase of carbon removal. So we bought over 1 million tons of carbon to be removed from the atmosphere. And we did this using mainly kind of natural-based solutions. So this is by improving the use of forestry and agriculture and so on. And this is the path that we want to move in really moving everybody into essentially emitting zero, and in fact being able to remove much more than trading tokens in terms of how much carbon you can emit. By the way, I'm very happy to have this fully interactive. So please don't be shy. If people have questions, just unmute yourself and ask the questions. Unfortunately, same as if I cannot see the chat. So if anybody wants to ask anything, just raise your hands, or in fact, just turn on your microphone and say, hey, I would like to ask something. Oh, this is good. Julia, you would like to ask something?
Yes, hello. I have a question regarding carbon removal.
Yeah.
I was curious, for what measures do you expect to achieve the carbon negative goal?
You mean in terms of the particular technologies to be able to do carbon removal? Yeah, so there are mainly two camps. And Eve, can we go to the previous slide? Oh, thank you very much. So there are mainly two types of techniques. So ones that are called nature-based solutions, which, as the name implies, essentially is based on the use of natural processes. So whether it is through agriculture or forestry, or you could even use kind of the oceans, and you try to improve your practices there. So for example, forests can capture more CO2, or you can deal with the way you prepare soils for agriculture in a different way. So again, they capture and store more carbon that they would do otherwise. And then there are purely technical solutions in which you either try to capture the carbon directly from the atmosphere. So you can imagine that you have some materials that in many ways act kind of a sticky tape. So they capture the molecules of carbon, and then you store this carbon back into particular reservoirs. So you use the geosphere to pack this carbon. In many ways is kind of a reversal of the process that happened originally with the fossil fuels, in which that's what happened. Essentially, living organisms were packed and ended just being accumulated in the surface of the earth. So those two are the main two technologies, kind of technologies that are technically based or nature based. Does that answer your question fully?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I see there is another question. Two questions, in fact.
I was just going to add, while the next person comes off mute, what I'm going to do, because we can't see the IM window, I'm going to be emailing the organisers, and I'm going to add in the carbon capture white paper that we mentioned, because whoever just asked that question is like 8 pages of pure carbon capture excitedness. So I'm going to email that across, and you should be able to get it after the event.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic paper, actually. It was done by a colleague of us called Liz Wilmot, and essentially it describes very openly all of the process that we have followed in Microsoft to be able not just to to start kind of buying carbon removal solutions, but to stimulate actually that more solutions and more research happens in this space. And again, we have published everything openly because we wanted everybody to be able to not only learn from this, but also to question and to point to us which things they believe that we could be doing better. And it's really generating a lot of traction. So earlier in the week, I was talking to the European Commission actually in terms of the lessons learned from there and how we can start creating standards from the European Union to really facilitate that this happens. But I see that there are some other questions. Lara, I think, or is it Lara? Yeah, Lara.
If Luca wants to go ahead, I think he raised the hand earlier.
Oh, sorry, I could not hear the question. Could you repeat the question again?
Okay, so I will go first. Earlier you mentioned machine learning, and I was wondering if Microsoft provided you a training on this specific subject or if you learn it by yourself before.
Yes. So as far as I'm aware, so in terms of the use of machine learning for environmental sciences, I don't think that we have any specific course, but there is quite a lot of kind of activity happening in that space now, and there is quite a lot of universities and groups like AI for Earth, etc., that are starting to facilitate the creation of solutions. So another link that we can provide is the links to our AI for Earth program, in which we have made available not only a lot of data sets, but APIs and also kind of programming kind of code and so on to help people getting into this space. And that includes some things that are very practical, like, for example, how can you use machine learning to recognize particular animal species in particular ecosystems, so you can have a kind of a real-time tracking, and others that are more kind of scientific based from the point of view of combining observations from kind of in situ and satellites to create maps of particular variables of your interest. So yeah, we can release all of that, and I think you will find quite a lot of useful information there, and that's linked with the planetary computer that Eve was mentioning earlier on.
Okay, thank you. And also I saw that Microsoft is sponsoring some quantum computer research for sustainability.
Yeah, so the quantum computer is very exciting. So the reason that it's been sponsored, of course, is because it will really halve, well, more than half the cost of operating particular algorithms, and of course that will have a very direct impact in terms of the environment, because one of the reasons that we emit carbon is because of the operations of our data centers. So a quantum computer potentially would be very useful, although there are some caveats to put in there. So quantum computers are very useful for some particular calculations, not for all type of calculations, but it's a very exciting avenue.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I think we have Karel as well that was raising his hand.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask if there's any plan on silicon sustainability or recycling, since silicon is contained in most chips and hardware, from GPUs in the Microsoft Surface Books to, I don't know, a TV, basically all of hardware. And like right now, because of COVID and some shortages, there already was a huge shake in the hardware, making I don't know, not a community, but like industry, and it has a huge effect.
Yeah. So it's another great question. I'm really enjoying the questions that all of you are asking. So we are putting a lot of effort into this. So one of the things that we are trying to achieve now is that all of our data centers become properly kind of circular data centers, if you want, from the point of view that you can really reuse and recycle every single material that goes in there, and yeah, anything to do with essentially the GPUs, the CPUs, etc., is included in that. But not only that, also kind of elements like the steel. We have a lot of steel in there, and we are really looking very seriously at how we can recycle this steel and make it more environmentally sustainable. And so one thing to say is quite a lot of these issues we know part of the answer, but we don't know it fully yet. So it includes a lot of research, and that's why people like me is working in Microsoft to really try to accelerate that research, because the time window that we have to make this happen is short.
And I would just add to that in the email we'll put a link to our devices sustainability report, because you mentioned there specifically our Surface devices.
Yeah.
And the devices team that work on what we put into our devices create this report, and it talks about the different precious minerals. And I've just had a quick look on silicon. There's nothing formally, there's not a lot of detail on it, but we'll share it in the link anyway. So if you're interested in the different materials that go into building our tech, you can review it there.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think next, and by the way, I don't know if this is the way or the order in which people have raised their hands, but this is the way it appears in my screen. So, Luca.
Thank you so much. Regarding artificial carbon capture technologies, from what I read, we still are at a very basic level in terms of like technical capability to build something that like efficient plants to capture back the CO2. So like according to your experience, how likely is it that like in 10, 50 years this technology can actually make an impact on our fight against the global change, climate change?
Yeah, no, another good question. So again, I mean, it really depends which side of the kind of carbon capture technologies you're looking at. So in the nature-based solution, one could argue that, I mean, we know quite a lot, and they are more mature solutions, and in many ways the main obstacle there is the creation of standards and regulation and so on, and there is an issue, of course, that if you use forestry or soil to capture carbon, there are competing demands like agriculture and so on. If you look at it from the purely kind of technical point of view of creating direct kind of carbon capture from the atmosphere, is still early days, and there are only a few prototypes that are ongoing. I mean, if you look at the graph that is on the screen, so we expect to move from around kind of 1 million tons that we have bought this year to being able to buy around 6 million tons per year by 2030, and the world will need much more than that. And again, there is plenty of research that needs to be done here, but we believe that in the next 10 years we are going to see an acceleration of this space. But it's not an easy thing to do, and it will definitely be a combination of nature-based solution and technology. It will not be a technology kind of only solution. And I think next one, at least the username appears as Cashito.
Thank you so much. So I had a question regarding e-waste. You've mentioned it, and I wanted to ask about it because it's extremely rare that you hear huge companies like Microsoft talk about it or even mention it, and I feel like it's really important to talk about, since not a lot of people know about it, and not a lot of people know what to do with like the technology that they throw away. So I wanted to ask, what do you think are some of the most effective ways to get rid of e-waste, and what does Microsoft do in order to reduce their e-waste? Thank you.
Yeah. So another great question. So it's a complicated issue because as you are aware, I mean, there are quite a lot of metals and other components inside of all of the technologies that we use every day that generate kind of the waste. It's still early days, and it's only now really that the industry has woken up to the need to have a proper circular economy with all of the devices, and we are trying to accelerate it. So the report that Eve was mentioning in terms of our Surface devices and so on contains some research on this kind of circular economy. But yeah, we need to accelerate, and we need to make it easier in the same way that we have made it easy with glass or paper. I mean, essentially now there is a easy way, if you live in Europe, to just recycle all of these materials, and it's not that easy with all of the electronics. So we need to continue working in that direction, really.
And yeah, and also I'll just put it out there that there is a lot of work that needs to happen, not only at the business end, but also at the consumer end. So you mentioned how not a lot of consumers know what to do with their devices. I think what's starting to happen now is people are starting to buy back devices. So Apple buy back devices, Samsung, I think, are starting to do it. Yeah. Because what can happen is actually there's a business model there. Because when I look at my phone, there's only parts of this that are degrading. Other parts are absolutely reusable. So I think it's also getting into the mind share of people taking ownership of their e-waste. So it's great that the businesses start doing it, but it's actually also consumers, because all we do is we buy it, we pick it up, we use it, we throw it away. We need to get everyone into that circular economy perspective as well. So I think you're right, e-waste is a really big problem. As Alberto says, people are only just waking up to it, but a lot of it is behavior change and thinking, because I'm sure if you asked the general population, they would have no idea that precious minerals were in their phone, and that's what's making them run. So I think it's also like education and awareness for consumers as well to stop consuming so much. But I've added the Circular Centre link, thanks to Edoardo, into the email, so you'll get it.
But you know, that's a huge point, actually, the one that Eve is making, that we have moved into a way of looking at things as kind of one-offs. You just buy a phone and you just use it and then you just throw it away, and there is very little consideration of kind of mending or repairing or changing components. And I think we will see possibly kind of a move into a space like similar to what it was kind of 20 years ago. More things get repaired than just kind of completely discarded, but that's to be seen. So I see the next one in my screen is Lilay George.
Hi, it's Lily. Sorry, my email.
Oh, sorry.
It's fine. I just wanted to say, I think your effort in promoting sustainability is really admirable, and it definitely provides a lot of hope for the future of climate action. If it hasn't already, do you think your work in becoming fully carbon negative will encourage other companies to do so? And is there any actions you're taking to encourage other companies to follow your example?
Yeah, no, it's definitely having a massive impact around the industry. So every day we have plenty of companies that are calling to us and just trying to learn from what we have done, and it generates kind of a little bit of a snowball effect. So that's being very positive. And definitely there are things that people can do. So for example, we are making all of our data centers carbon neutral, so consumers can vote with their feet. They can go and use these resources that are carbon neutral and that are using renewable energy and so on. And everybody is, as Eve was saying, not just a single kind of person, but many persons in one. So you can write to your members of parliament, to the European, saying that you want this kind of a sphere of industry regulated, and you want to see actually that it's compulsory, that any industry aims to be a kind of a net zero industry. So yeah, all of those steps and many more should be taken by individuals. And I see next one is Celine Becker.
Hi, I just want to ask if you have any scientific solution proposals for businesses which both want to grow financially but also want to have carbon removal policies. Is it possible to both grow but also be carbon neutral?
Yeah. We definitely believe so. So that's what we are trying to do ourselves. And this graph here, the one that you can see, that is essentially the dotted line is taking us to be carbon neutral, is still happening while we expect to have quite a lot of business growth in the next 10 years. So it's not that we are aiming to achieve this by keeping the business still or in fact to make the business smaller. We want to do this while the business is growing, and we believe it can be done, and many other industries believe it can be done, but it really requires this change of mindset, change in the way you do operations. I can tell you one thing. So we are looking now at our data centers, and there is a lag in the technologies. So we are opening data centers every day, and some of the technologies we use, the ones that we have today. At the same time, we are changing those technologies. So in 3 years' time, they will be different. And this is a race actually to be able to replace all of the technologies that are not carbon neutral as fast as possible, and to increase the amount of renewable energy and so on. But Absolutely, yes. I think both things are possible. That it shouldn't be seen as a dichotomy that you either have kind of economic prosperity or a carbon neutral economy. You can have both.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And Eve, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about the number of customers and so on that we get normally.
We have just lots of them, is the easiest answer to the question of the customer side. I think it's just, I think back to the last question about this being achievable, it's the fact that it will only be achievable if all of our customers and all of our partners join us on this journey and no one kind of backs down. We know we're only on a journey to getting this right, and we'll only be successful if other people are successful. So we need lots of customers and partners to help us out. Just conscious of time, Alberto. So do you want to take them through some of the science angles, and then we'll let Edoardo talk about the community side, because I think there should be some great questions in there too.
Yeah, I will be quick and then we take more questions, but it has been great actually having the opportunity to have some questions. I have loved them. You are very good. It has been really enjoyable.
Some of these questions.
Oops, you have gone muted, Eve.
We cannot hear you, Eve. Your mic dropped.
While Eve, Houston, we have some trouble. While
okay,
Houston,
I'm back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah, I was just saying that some of these questions that you're all asking are better than a lot of the questions I get from customers that I engage with. So keep them coming.
So just very quickly, I will go through some of the slides, and Eve is doing well in rushing me because I'm a professor, so I suffer from professorial disease that I can talk forever. So don't let me talk forever, because it's far more interesting to hear you talking. So this is a curve of the concentration. This is the observations of the concentrations of CO2 that we see kind of being monitored, and it's a curve that stopped in 2012 or 2013, just because I took it from the last round of the IPCC. But the important thing here is, like, as you know, this is increasing, and it's increasing very rapidly. And if we go to the next one, Eve, and of course, this is having a very similar and clear impact in the temperatures, which we see increasing. And I'm showing this plot actually because it has all of the measurements of the global temperature from all of the centers that measure the global temperature. And as you can see, the lines on the left-hand side, they are all pretty much overlapping each other. So there is very little kind of controversy or doubt in the scientific community about this. And the other interesting thing to say is the plots that you see on the right-hand side, which are kind of the increase in temperature in different parts of the world from some of these different data sets. And one thing that people often forget when we talk about the kind of the global values is that temperatures increase differently in different parts of the world. And there are some parts that are seeing already huge increases in temperature. So you can see kind of the purple colors in some of the analysis, the bottom one, which is from NASA. And yeah, some of these areas are already experiencing increases in temperature of 3 degrees. And this is not a projection, this is observed now. And can we go to the next one, Eve? Thank you. So one thing I wanted to say, because again, sometimes this is forgotten. So the greenhouse effect is not per se a bad thing. Actually, the greenhouse effect is what keeps us alive. It keeps the earth warm. The problem is that we have broken a little bit the balance here, and we are just having kind of CO2 that we are pumping and breaking this balance that the world have achieved very, very nicely. And this is very problematic, because if we go to the next slide, Eve. So this is a plot of kind of the global temperature for many, many millions of years. So you can see that I have put some kind of labels in red here. And if you look at the left-hand side, it says dinos, from where the dinosaurs were kicking around in Earth. And you can see that the temperatures there were quite a bit warmer, actually, of what they are now. They have been estimated to be around 10 degrees warmer. But if you move your eyes towards the right-hand side of the plot, and I have put a couple of labels there where kind of Homo sapiens is estimated to have kind of emerge, and then another kind of label around when writing is believed to have emerged. And particularly if you look at this kind of right-hand side of the plot, you can see that the temperature that we have seen on Earth is very, very stable. And again, the point here, and this is something that is very important, it's not that we are talking about saving Earth. What we are talking about is saving humanity. So Earth have seen much warmer temperatures and much colder temperatures, and planet Earth has been okay. But humanity is very unlikely to be okay if we see the kind of the increases in temperature that are expected. And there are two red blobs there in the right-hand side, which are corresponding to around 2 degrees and 5 degrees. And again, you can see that they are much, much higher than anything that the human species have experienced. So we will really need to do quite a lot of adaptation very quickly if we don't control the amount of temperature increase that we are seeing. So could I have the next one, please? So this is the estimated kind of increase in global surface temperature for the next, well, quite a few hundred years. But if you just look up to the year 2100, I just wanted to call your attention to a couple of things. So the first one is that in the year 2100, you see different lines there, the red line and the yellow line and the blue line, and all of these that are quite different at the end of the century are because they correspond to different scenarios, which essentially means different amounts of CO2 that we are pumping into the atmosphere. But if you look kind of to the year 2050 and before 2050, actually the increases in temperature are very similar regardless of the scenario. So you see the differences very, very clearly at the end of the century, but not so clearly before. So yeah, I'm in my mid-40s, so I'm unlikely to see what is going to happen at the end of the century, but you are far more likely than I am to see this. And it's at the end of the century where this becomes absolutely critical. And this is why it really matters now, actually, to choose one particular trajectory or another. This is not something that we are going to see in the next 30, 40 years, but it's something that we will see in 80 years' time. And the only moment that we can alter this is now. So that's the reason that at Microsoft and Edoardo, Eve, and myself are really, really very active and working a lot on this, because now is the moment to make this happen. And could I have next one, Eve? And the reason for this, and I just want you to look at the bottom plot, the one that says atmospheric CO2, because what is forgotten often is that the CO2 stays in the atmosphere for a very, very long time. So it's not a question that whatever we are going to do is going to disappear quickly. So these things are going to stay in the atmosphere for a long time. And if you look at the time axis, it goes from the year 2000 to the year 3000. And some of these scenarios, the red line that I was showing in the previous plot and the yellow line, so this concentration of CO2 will stay there unless we find a technological mean of removing them for 1,000 years. So this is the reason that we really need to avoid this. And Edoardo, I see that you're raising your hand.
Yeah, because I'm learning stuff too in this call, and I wanted to ask you, why is it forecasted to drop in around 2200?
Yeah, so if you look at these two plots, so the one on the top essentially these are scenarios on how the emissions are going to occur. So the red curve is essentially saying, okay, the humans continue emitting CO2 until pretty much close to the year 2200, and after that we just drop dramatically. And once we stop emitting CO2, the natural processes that absorb CO2, whether it is kind of the biosphere or just the natural kind of weathering of the CO2, start taking effect. So those are just the natural processes consuming the CO2. But as you can see, it takes a very long time. So if we expect that we are just going to pump CO2 and then magically planet Earth is going to do the work for us, this is not going to happen. So we will really need to live in a situation that is unprecedented for human beings. And that's the reason that is, to be frank, it's better not to touch that experiment. We should keep it kind of in a range of temperatures that are good for human beings to thrive. Otherwise, we will have a serious problem.
Thank you.
But if we can have the next one. So this one, I just wanted to show this because, again, you have been seeing these kind of red lines and yellow lines and so on in some of the previous plots, and these are all kind of curves coming from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. These scenarios, the way that they are constructed is all by making estimations of the way that as a society and as an economy we are going to change. And as you have seen in the plots, the effect that we see in global temperature at the end of the century really depends on which one of these paths we follow. But these paths are entirely for us to choose. And this is the important thing to remember here. It's not that any of these paths are predetermined. These are the choices that we make now and how we want to live. And you can read the text here, but essentially one of the scenarios essentially assumes that it's a very kind of highly energy intensive, with consumption continuing and oil continuing and coal being used. Whereas the other scenario, the blue one, the one that is called the RCP 2.6, essentially assumes that oil declines rapidly and renewable energy increases, and still we need to do more than this. So this is the point here, and this is why your generation is absolutely critical, the engagement, and as you were asking in your questions, actually to take action and just to put pressure and to make choices using the different personas that you are, to choose one of these curves that keeps us all kind of in a safer ground. And I think next slide takes us already into Eduardo's side of the presentation. So Eduardo, all yours.
Thank you. I'll try to share my screen, so I leave Eve free. Let's see if I can do it. Can you see my screen? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the first thing that I wanted to do was to really shout out to all of you, because I wanted to say that all these questions and this kind of maturity are not expected, and it's actually really refreshing to see it from such a young audience. So you should be really proud of yourself, and you give hope to all of us for the future. So thank you all for the questions. It was very, very interesting. After even Alberto, I'll try to let you give you a bit more of information about what we do as a sustainability community. As we were speaking before, Microsoft is one of the lucky companies in the tech sector that try to lead the other companies and try to show by example what can we do. We are also very lucky because we have a lot of resources. So we are trying to pave the way for the others and also use the resources that we have in a good way. So we have also a responsibility to use the resources that we have. And it is a really exciting world in which to operate. Our sustainability community was founded in 2018, and it is basically the community of all employees. It's an internal community. We have more than 2,500 employees, but this is an old figure. I think we are way past that numbers. And this is basically only the people who are actually involved in actively in the community around the world. As you can see, we have more than 100 countries. So basically we represent, we have a very diverse group, and basically we include everyone who is passionate about sustainability and green topics. We are divided in chapters, which means that we have a local structure for each country where you organize your activities around a group. And for each country, you have an executive sponsorship. As Yves was saying before, we have to start from the top to have some information and real targets and real results. Executive sponsorship is basically that. We act as a group to drive interest of our executive sponsors, and we have to bring on their table the actions that we want them to do. So it really starts from the bottom to the top. What does the community do? The community is a group of employees, as I was saying before, and basically we are engaged in all the activities that can make the voice of Microsoft be heard. We have a lot of communications and information going on. So the very first duty of the community is to be, let's say, the amplification of the voice of people who are interested on green topics. So we participate in all kind of initiatives about explaining, like what we are doing now. So explaining the science behind climate change. We try to bring these topics in a more friendly way instead of being just shouting danger, but trying to explain what is behind it and why we need to reason all together on this. And we try to work with leadership. Basically, we have events, we have hackathons where we try to leverage the expertise of our colleagues. The typical Microsoft employee has a level of technical expertise which can be extremely useful to develop new tools and new systems to help our customers and ourselves to be more effective in tackling climate change. We also have a lot of work on try to put all the information about these topics in summaries and digestible ways, so that we have information quickly available and updated. One of the main things that you will see when you join companies in the future, very near future, is that sustainability is a huge topic. There is a lot of information, and one of the things that is very and extremely important is that it is important to have information available and that is useful. So noise around this topic is huge, and to have data which is up to date and reliable is extremely crucial, and is not that easy to find. And also we have a lot of initiatives with basically normal volunteering activities, like picking up litter, planting trees, and all that stuff. So we try to cover all the topics. In Italy, we have a community of around 100 people. We are where I am the leader of the Italian chapter with a team. So we basically are a group that try to coordinate all these activities that I was talking about before on top of our normal job. So we are not paid for that. We are basically just passionate about these topics, and we try to do our best. It's all volunteering work, so you have to organize it with your normal job. The activities that we do are basically divided in internal activities, so stuff that we do with our colleagues, and external activities that we do with partners and non-profit organizations and all the external companies. So I just bring you here some examples of what we do to give you an idea. I just want, before going into these details, I just wanted to explain that there is a lot of autonomy in this, and there is basically what Microsoft does. Our CEO Satya Nadella, the one that Eve was talking about before, is always telling us, use Microsoft as a platform to do what you want it to do. So basically, these activities are not something that we do because they are in our daily job schedule. They are activities that we do because we believe that they are interesting and useful. And if we choose to do something different, something more, we have the total autonomy to do that. So it is really empowering as a feeling that you are actually trying to do something and working on these topics. One of the first that comes to my mind is the Eco Challenge, which is basically a worldwide competition to keep track of our sustainability actions. So basically, we have a portal where you say, today I didn't use the car, and you earn points because you saved emissions. This is a little game that is going on now for April. It will end next week. We have basically a leaderboard which tracks who does the most actions, most green actions, and in the end of April, the winner will be announced. At the moment, Team Italy is 6th in the world, so we are in a very good position, and we are trying to beat some teams in America which are much bigger. But we are ready to fight. So we'll see who wins next week. Another word on Eco Challenge is that basically these activities done to show the collective impact of a lot of small actions. I'm sure that most of you have heard that it's not one people that solves the issue, but it's only a collective action that works together. And this kind of challenge is very useful because you see after a few days that thousands of people track their little saving on water, a little bit of kilometers not done by car but by walking, and you see the sum that grows every day. We are now in huge numbers. We have saved thousands of gallons of water. We have not traveled by car for thousands of kilometers, and it is done to show the impact of every small action that we do. PowerLeaf is a power app. I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but it's basically a framework that we have in Microsoft to develop apps without actually writing code. It's this app is basically a gamification app for sustainable actions, and we are now actively working with the guys that you see in this picture. And as you can see, some of them are my age, so they are very young. And basically these guys are trying to develop a solution that we can give for free to our customers, so that they can the companies that work with Microsoft can have this solution to empower their employees to do sustainable actions and track them, as I was saying before. Another activity that we do a lot, and it is similar to what we are doing now, is we collaborate with schools. So it is very strange for someone who was in school not that long ago, to be on the other side. And it is really interesting because you can collaborate with professors and you can be in touch with schools and try to drive and let them know what you're doing in your job. And it is something that not every company lets you do. So it's something that is you can be really proud of. And another thing that I am actually very, very proud of is that we are working with the team that manages our facilities, so our offices, our company vehicles. And we have, for example, as you see the bottles here, one of the initiatives that we did was to give every employee in Italy a reusable bottle, so that he didn't use plastic bottles. Or we are actively, one of my biggest fights is to implement electric plugs for cars, so that hopefully in the next few years we will have only electric cars for our fleet. And we are working with the people that manage the buildings to change the building and make the infrastructure available for all of us to have electric cars and don't pollute the air. And we have also a lot of campaigns of communications inside the offices, like the one you see here. I don't know if you see my cursor, but basically these are stickers that we put. So for example, we put funny ones like "Don't take the elevator," and then there's stickers in the stairs that says, "Come on, you can do it. You saved a little bit of CO2 just by doing these few steps," something like that. So all of these are activities that we do internally with among our employees. The external activities, as I was saying, are activities that we do with partners like universities and companies. For example, this is done with the Politecnico of Milano, which is one of the top technical universities in Italy. And we created a business game, which basically is designed to bring out the best ideas from teams of students. And then the winners of this competition get our instruments as Microsoft, so they get maybe free licenses, or they can develop solutions on Azure, and they can try to use Microsoft technology to develop their ideas. It is incredibly exciting to see these kind of solutions come to life when you are in the position to contribute with them. Another thing that we are trying to do is to foster innovation in particular regarding sustainability. So we developed a group of partners that are also involved banks, which give capital to basically a little fund that gives funding to sustainable solutions and innovative solutions. So we do, while the thing that I was talking about before is related to students, here is for startups. So the idea is to find young entrepreneurs that are have ideas related to sustainability and try to scale up their solutions. These kind of activities are done with Microsoft for Startups, which is one division of Microsoft, which is working a lot in collaboration with the sustainability community. Microsoft for Startups is basically our incubator and accelerator of startups, and Microsoft is also choosing the startups in which to invest based on sustainability criteria. So we try to bring sustainability across the whole range of activities in our company. As we were saying before, in data centers, in our employees' activities, in our investments, and it is thanks to the vision of our leadership. And another thing that we are doing now is we received in Italy an investment of 1.5 billion from the headquarters in the US to fund our new data center. The new data center will, of course, respect all the things that we were saying before about circularity and have the top technology in regarding the emissions and green solutions that help reduce the impact of the data center at the maximum level possible. But also we are using this opportunity of funding to create a plan which is called Ambizione Italia. And Ambizione Italia means ambition for Italy, and is also a word game for AI, Ambition Italy. And this is basically an occasion that we have more unique than rare, that we can use to have funding to sustain sustainability solutions. We have again funding from our side, and then we have the top universities in Italy like Bocconi. We have Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, which is basically the top investment entity that we have in Italy, which are part of this ecosystem that we have created to sustain an ecosystem of sustainability activities.
Just to jump in here, Edoardo, yeah. The team are going to have to go 5 minutes back to the general chat, and I just wondered if anyone, if you were at the point in your presentation, and I think we've nailed it because you've got to the last slide, if anyone had any questions for you.
I'm done with the slides, so yeah, you jumped at the right moment.
Amazing timing. Has anyone got any questions for Edoardo?
I think probably you and Alberto have more interesting stuff than me, but I think it's better to have done the question during the presentation. Please, Julia.
Thank you. So as you mentioned several times, Microsoft has massive resources to actually set ambitious goals and then achieve them. But do you think that small and medium-sized enterprises also have such capability to implement such solutions?
Okay, it's a really nice question, and I think that as I was trying to say at the beginning, probably us as big companies, and I don't say only Microsoft, but most of the big companies have a responsibility to show the path of what we should do, as always, all of us. I think all the companies should try and be responsible and try to have the least amount of impact possible. And it is also a business sensitive thing to do. If you are, as a business, are not sustainable, it is very probable that you cannot do business for a long time, because probably your business, as you all are demonstrating now, and this generation is very sensible to these topics, and probably this has a very big impact on which companies you buy from, which companies you choose. So for any kind of business, it's very important to have this kind of objectives. Of course, if you don't have the resources of a top level company in the world, you cannot do the investment that we do, but you can do your part. And even Alberto, please correct me if you have more to say.
No correcting at all. Just building on what you said, and that some smaller companies actually are a bit more agile. So one thing I would say at Microsoft is those commitments that we made last year. Yes, we had the resources, and yes, we had the time, but it took a lot of time. It took many years. Whereas some smaller companies and medium-sized companies are much more agile and can make changes a bit quicker. So I would say absolutely, it's not all about resources and people. It's about the strategy, and it's about as Edoardo says, it's about the desire to want to do it. So Julia, that's how I would answer that question, to say, no, you don't have to be big. If you're smaller, you're agile, you can move faster, so you should do.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, I mean, we are trying to create kind of technology, solutions, knowledge, and make it available to everybody. So hopefully, actually, if we make mistakes, others can move faster, can actually look at these things and say, you know what, it can be done better, and just go and do it better.
Yeah, it's something we do together.
Awesome. Great. Are there any other questions then before Filippo? I guess we have to head over to the other general session, right?
Yeah, indeed. We were just about to say that sadly that was the last question of the meeting, and this is really a pity because I would have loved to stay here some more time to talk with you, but because it was really interesting. So yeah, now we are going out of this call and going back in the call which is open in the general channel, so that we can have a little closure with the other participants. Thank you very much again for taking part, and thank you very much, Yves, Alberto, and Edoardo. And I think we have a little announcement by our media team for some media output.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for this wonderful workshop. It was a pleasure to listen. And could I ask everybody to turn their cameras on so we could take some pictures, please?
I've got together mode turned on, so you're all sat in chairs for me, which is great.
Yeah, I think that works. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So as I was saying, let's head to the general channel.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone for coming along. I hope it was useful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.